أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسل بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون وبعد فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه العزيز أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا ويرزق من حيث لا يحتسب ومن يتوكل على الله فهو حسبه إن الله بالغ أمره قد جعل الله لكل شيء قدرا. My respected brothers and sisters, ulama ikram, I greet you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh. It is a great honor and a great pleasure for me, and something that I'm very passionate about, to address the ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with regard to Quran and Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I think my topic here today is, if I can just recall what the topic is, keeping the spark alive. I will try and do justice to the topic. I am standing here as a humble servant of Allah, and I'm going to try and make a small contribution to what was already said this morning. It's always important for the listener or for the audience to know who the speaker is. So when I'm going to say something, and I'm going to relate something to you, and when I'm going to give you a case study, then you'll have some idea as to why I am saying this. First of all, my name is Imam Moutie Saban, better known as everybody Imam Moutie Saban. I am the youngest son of the late Imam Abu Bakr Saban. My father passed on about 40 years ago. May Allah place him in the highest place in Jannah, inshallah, and all the others deceased. I have been in the masjid, Jamia Masjid in the Bukab in Kapini Street, only now for the past 54 years. I'm the Imam there now for the past 38 years. I've been the head of the social welfare department and senior marriage counselor at the Muslim Judicial Council, only now for 33 years. I've conducted my pre-post course in marriage that runs over a period of 7 months, now for the past 32 years. And it was nice for me to place myself next to one of my ex-students, and I asked him, when were you in my class? And he says, 14 years ago or 16 years ago, something like that. And then I been on the radio Voice of the Cape with a program that I wrote and produced since day one when radio came into being, a program called Happy Families in Happy Homes. Because I've always felt while sitting in the offices at the MJC, I'm giving a nasiha to one person, and there are thousands of people out there that needs it. So that is where I come from, and I do counseling by Skype all over the world currently, and the world is full of problems. So, to begin with, to keep the sparks alive between a couple, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, and you find this verse in Surah Hujurat, يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, O mankind, I've created you from a single male and female. Muhammad Shaykh, Assalamu alaikum. From a male and female, and made you into nations and tribes. As we all sit here, there are no two people who are alike. We think we are compatible. We are not compatible. Allah has created us all differently. But the Quran says that Allah has not created two sets of fingerprints the same. So how can we all think alike? But Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, so further in this beautiful ayat, whilst we are all different people and nations and tribes, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. But the best of you in the sight of Allah are those that are God-fearing, those that possesses piety, those that respect the laws of Allah, those that fear the day of Qiyamah. Inna Allahu alimun khabir, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is well acquainted with all things. Now, when we look at to keep that spark alive between a couple all the time, there is something that preempts that. And now I speak what I encounter at my office. Something like 12 to 13 years ago, I did a research through the office at the MGC in what better place. And there are many of the students who are prominent sheikhs when they have come from Medina, studied for 8, 9, 10 years. Then they come and spend a year or two in my office. Because that is the practical side of things. The theoretical side is one thing, book knowledge. But to go in and apply and to see the real world out there is something else. And I want to bring the real world to you. And the real world that I want to bring to you, no matter what profession the person is. Now I don't want you to think as myself that I want to tell you what I do and what I've done. I want to ask you mouth. That is not the idea. But I want you to acquire information and knowledge from what I'm going to share with you, the real world out there. The real world is 70% of the people that apply for divorce in the Western Cape would have been married from day 1 to 7 years. That is what I did 12, 13 years ago. And the ratio and the status quo is exactly the same today, if not higher. What is then the main reason? One of those main reasons are, you see, young people have the tendency, and you will know that if I say between 1 and 7 years, then you're obviously speaking about a group age, a category of people. Young people sometimes have the tendency of saying, I know, nobody can tell me, it's my life. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu used to say, he who says he knows not, and he who says he knows not, he knows. Choosing your right spouse can keep your spark alive. choosing your right spouse. And I find that the most educated and knowledgeable people sometimes chooses the wrong spouse, although you're an educated person. But we must be careful when we define an educated person. An educated person doesn't necessarily mean a person with a whole page of degrees. An educated person is the person who possesses degrees that our forefathers, your grandfathers and great-grandfathers all possessed once upon a time. And that, alhamdulillah, most of the community do possess it in today's time, is when Allah Ta'ala addresses, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullah. Iman and taqwa. But if you have an LLB and you have a BSc and you have a BA, but you're not a God-fearing person, inna akramakum indallah atqakum, and what is that going to help you on the day of Qiyamah? Choosing your right partner, like the two key hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he says, ladies, when a man comes to you and want to acquire your hand in marriage, he says, وَإِذَا خَطَبَ إِلَيْكُمْ مَنْ تَرْضَوْنَ دِينَهُ وَخُلُقَهُ فَزَوِّجُوا إِلَّا تَفْعَلُوا تَكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ عَرِيضٌ. Man comes to you and wants to marry you. مَنْ تَرْضَوْنَ دِينَهُ. Look at the man's religion. Today, I had somebody in the week. How people get hold of my email address and my WhatsApp and cell numbers and SMS, it's just amazing. But alhamdulillah, it's most welcome. But it's not always possible that you can answer all at the same time. Like somebody says to me last week about interfaith marriages. He says, you don't ask who you fall in love with. This is the mind of an educated person. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, he says, Man tardawna deenahu. Look at the guy's religion. Look at the man's religion. Is he a Muslim? Is he a uprighteous Muslim? Is he a practicing Muslim? Wa khuluqahu. Look at his akhlaq. Look at the character. Look at how he earns his money. Look at how he spends his money. Look at his friends. Look at the surroundings. Those things are vitally important. Ladies, let me tell you something. 60, 70, 80 years ago in the Buka, and that's where Islam started, a young man came to knock on the door and he asked for this man's daughter's hand in marriage. And the man said, do you have wudu? He says, no. He says, can you go to the back? He says, what is that got to do with the proposal of marriage? He says, listen, you in my home, you want to marry my daughter? Go and take wudu. So eventually he goes and takes wudu, and he came back, and the father says, there's the Quran, recite. He says, I can't recite so well. He says, no, I tell you what, first go and learn how to recite the Quran properly, and then come and propose marriage to my daughter. We learn about psychology. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the greatest psychologist that lived on this earth. He looked at a far bigger picture than what you can see in front of you. And the far bigger picture is that man will have to go and teach your children one day. He's going to be the father of your children. That is why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, Man tardawna deena wa khuluqahu. Look at the man's religion and look at his akhlaq. And then also choosing a lady. It then also says, Tunkahul mar'ata li'arba, limaliha wa lihasabiha wa lijamaliha wa lidiniha. You see, you marry a woman for a beauty, a money, a family lineage. Wa lidiniha. You should marry a woman because of deen, فَاظْفَرَّ بِذَاتِ دِينِ تَرِبَتْ يَدَاكَ. If you're not going to marry a woman because of deen, you're going to have endless problems. So when we look at the end result, you want to keep the spark alive, but your foundation of your building you lay incorrectly. But if you lay the foundation correctly, you're going to have that in the end. There are a couple of practical issues that keep the spark alive in a marriage. And I must share this with you. When I do marriage counseling, very, very, very sadly, I'm going to put it mildly, 90% plus of the couples that we address on the daily basis, they do not perform Salah. I say 90%. I can go up higher, but I'm going to put it mildly by saying 90% of the couples do not perform Salah. You take, for example, at the masjid where I am in the Bukab, I live in Crawford. I try my best to drive every day from Crawford into Bukab to go and lead Salah. There are some nights when I walk in for Maghrib, where Islam started, then myself and the Mu'adhin is alone in the masjid. And then when I'm finished, then there's about 2 safs. When we lived in District 6, when hardly part of the community was a matriculate, 15 to 20% of the community were in the masjid before the adhan goes off. To me, this idea of having sound systems was a bad implementation, because the community of yesteryear were differently programmed. They used to go and seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's barakah and ni'mah and blessings long before the actual of Allahu Akbar. That made our community. In fact, a couple of days ago, I want to share with you, I spoke to a lot of my colleagues and I says, I am concerned that the quality of practicing of Islam, like somebody said to me Friday in the mosque, a man came to me and he says to me, can you speak to the community how the men used to dress on a Friday? I says, I can show you a photo of 50 years ago. We were taught as children, a few days before Friday Jummah, take out your best clothes. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says that the day of Jummah is greater and better by Allah than Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. Now if you look at how we are dressed for Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha and how we dress for Jummah, the practicing and the implementation of deen plays a very big role in whatever subject that you want to think of. The ayat in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Rum verse 21, some of the other speakers might have spoken about it, but I want to make a commitment to you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Rum verse 21, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, وَمِنْ آيَاتِي أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. The commitment that I want to make to you is this. In my 40 years of counseling, that whenever I speak about this ayat out of Surah Rum, I get a better understanding of the ayat in the Quran. Anybody who says, I know what Allah says in the Quran, I know what the hadith says, is dangerous. I am still learning about this beautiful verse in the Quran. Allah Ta'ala says, and amongst the signs of Allah, Allah refers to, when Allah says, وَمِنْ آيَةٍ, refers to the women. وَمِنْ آيَةٍ, amongst the signs of Allah. Women are the signs of Allah. وَمِنْ آيَاتِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. And amongst the signs of Allah is this, that He created for you mates from amongst yourself. For what purpose? لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so that you may dwell in tranquility. Now comes the middle part of the ayat. Listen carefully. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. And Allah places love and mercy between your hearts. If a couple should walk down the steps here, and this couple says to me now, can you kindly perform the nikah between the two of us? And I asked, why? This is a stupid question if a couple wants to get married. And I said, so why? No, we married in love. We cannot take our hands off one another. Or we don't want to continue dating and etc., etc. But when somebody tells me that we are madly in love, and that is the reason why when you get married, then I'll be a very worried person. I tell you why. What they think is love might just be lust, might just be infatuation. Right? The last part of the ayat, Allah says, Inna fi dhalika la ayatin liqawmi yatafakkarun. Verily in that are signs for those who reflect, those who sit still and contemplate, those who remember Allah. Now if Allah Ta'ala says, and listen carefully, if Allah says, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً, Allah places love and mercy. It's not something that you and I place together. If there are married couples in this audience, nobody, including myself, can say how much more or less your spouse is going to feel towards you by tomorrow morning. Nobody knows that. And this is why. Sometimes a husband and a wife gets up in the morning. It's almost like going to a switch. You want to put on the light and there's no spark. As the topic says, keep the spark alive. You put on the switch, there's no lights. There's no electricity. And we start blaming ESCOM. Husband looks at the wife. Wife looks at the husband. Don't look at me. Cannot understand. We went to bed last night so loving. We were happy. We were out the whole day yesterday. And the wife says, look, don't touch me. I don't love you anymore. I hear this all the time. In the first 7 years, I hear it all the time. And now the man comes to me or the wife comes to me and they want me to perform miracles. Right? We can perform miracles providing. If you want to become a marriage counselor, and this is what the Western Cape needs. The Western Cape needs lifesavers. There are too few lifesavers at the moment. There are too many homes that are breaking up every day. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً, Allah places love and mercy. Allah makes a promise and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never breaks Allah's promise. But now we need to establish, what do we do in order for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with that love and mercy? And this is very serious. I've already had couples in front of me courting for 9 years and the marriage lasts 1 month. How does that sound? That sounds almost impossible. Young people sometimes get married for all the wrong reasons. Anybody setting up home to get the blessings of Allah will be performing an ibadah. Right? Will be performing an ibadah. And the performance of that ibadah is got to do with subject to certain rules and regulations that you have to carry out. What will keep the spark going and the spark flying right to the end of a marriage between a couple? Anybody who is married here, think of what I'm going to say now. In order to make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala part of that relationship, for Allah to place that love and mercy between that couple, now obviously there are certain acts that we have to perform. And one of the major acts and the implementation of that into our marriage is when a wife opens her eyes in the morning, when a husband opens his eyes in the morning, after having thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for bringing us back to life, you look at your partner, you say to your partner, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah Ta'ala says in Surah An-Nisa, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, وَإِذَا حَيِّيتُم بِتَحِيَّةٍ فَحَيُّوا بِأَحْسَنَ مِنَّا أَوْ رُدُّوهَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلَيْكُمْ حَسِيبًا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you greet someone, and I don't know why sometimes Muslims are afraid to say Assalamu alaikum. Imagine a husband or a wife, they say to one another, Assalamu alaikum. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you. Imagine you start your day like that. That's one of the major reasons. You ask anybody who's experiencing a marital discord, have marriage problems, ask them genuinely. They must tell you. If they in the morning, when they get up and they greet one another. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not brought into the equation. Remember I said earlier, there are no two people in this audience that are alike. Nobody is incompatible. Sometimes I wish the word incompatibility was never placed in the Oxford Dictionary. There's no two people. But if you put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Quran, Kalamullah, the verses of the Quran and the implementation of the verses and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you place that between a couple, the Quran will make any couple compatible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Quran, listen to me, will make any and every couple compatible. I want to give you a case study. I want to give you a case study and maybe we can all learn from this. 2 months ago, a couple walked into my home, married for 28 years. And this is the first thing they said. We want you to officiate a talaq between the two of us. We married 28 years. We've been to the MJC. We've seen so many counselors. And we don't want to waste your time and we don't want to waste the MJC's time. So I said, then obviously you've come to the wrong person. I'm going to ask you, please give me the opportunity to counsel you. So they says, okay, fine. But remember at the end, we would still want to go through with our divorce. I says, no problem, as long as we understand one another. So I spoke to them for 20 minutes. And in the end, they said to me, are you going to officiate the Salah? So I said, look, I've got another request. I want you to cooperate with me. I says, I'm going to postpone this case for 7 days. But in 7 days, there are certain things that I want you to do for me, both of you. So they said, no, what is it? I want you to, as much as possible, perform your Salah together. As that ex-student of mine said, he still remembers a family that prays together, stays together. I want you to make your Isha Salah together in your bedroom. And I want you to, after your Salah, not only perform your Salah, but make your tasbih. Your tasbih, Fatimi. Subhanallah. This thing about getting up, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, there we go. That's not good enough. If ever you go to Malaysia one day, I've experienced this a few times, north of Malaysia in a place called Kota Baru. I went to go and perform Salah to Maghrib. And I wanted to sit in the last saf, and the mosque was 3/4 full. And when the Imam was finished, nobody got up. The Imam made Surah Fatiha, Allahumma anta salam, and then they recite Ayatul Kursh, the whole masjid together. And they recited Qul Wallahu Ahad before the Ayatul Kursh, Falaq an-Nas, and Ayatul Kursh, and then the Imam says, Subhanallah. And this is what they do. The whole masjid, Subhanallah, 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 Alhamdulillah, 33 times, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, 33 times, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Then they recite Surah Fatiha and the Imam make dua, and then everybody gets up. Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'inna al-qulub. Then the remembrance of Allah bring tranquility to the heart. Our forefathers, including my father and your grandfathers, were masters. When at the masjid where I am, in Kapini Street, I get mostly foreigners. I want to relate to you a statement that I hear from them all the time. And I want to say to this, you ladies here as well sitting here today. The one thing they say is the best Islam practicing in the world is Cape Town. And they also tell me, your women are one of the best in the world. This doesn't come from me. This is what I hear from them. Obviously, there are certain things that we have inherited from our forefathers, which implemented can only make us better people. So this particular couple, I said to them, after your Salatul Isha, make tasbih, bring salawat, and then you turn towards one another, remain on your sujada, make a cup of tea, drink from one cup, do what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. When he put his mouth into this part of the cup, take that cup and put it into her mouth. The Prophet ﷺ was one of the most romantic people. And then you make dua together. Will you do that? They said, yes, we want to also tell you that we stood on Arafah together a good couple of years ago. He says, MashaAllah. I says, think of what you said on Arafah. Inna alhamda wa ni'mata laka wal mulk la sharika lak. I will not make shirk with the laws of Allah. You say to Allah, here I am to thee, here am I to thee, Ya Allah. Will you do that? We will do that. They came back 7 days later. I promised them no counseling. Sit down. And your response is, both together says, we don't want to hear the word talaq. You can only keep the spark flying if Allah is brought into the equation, when I counsel a couple in my office, and this is what I normally said, I said to them, look towards the ceiling. I said, you see there's a wire going from this office to the other office. And this office gives power, electricity to the other office. But what do you think will happen if I cut this wire in two? Obviously there will be no power in the next office. It is like that. You cannot just have an Allah practicing father and husband who gets up for Fajr and the wife sleeps, or the other way around. Both must share in the ibadat of Allah in order to get that proper result. Now when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَعْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً, Allah places love and mercy between your hearts. That is not in our control. That is why young people sometimes fall in love and quickly fall out of love. There was one day when I interviewed on the radio an elderly couple who was married for 70 years. 70. And when I asked this old lady, what made their marriage last for 70 years and their sparks are still flying after 70 years, she gave me a very simple answer that me and you can write volumes about. What she said, we only carried out the commands of Allah. That is all. What she in actual fact has been saying is something that I want to leave you with. That I have, through the barakah and the ni'mah and the mu'jiza of the Quran, I have reconciled many marriages, and you can do exactly the same. I'm not here to tell you what I've done, but I want to share it with you so that you can do exactly the same, inshallah. When the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam performed Salah, and he made his niyat for the Salah, he not only used to go straight on to recite Surah Fatiha, but he used to recite the Dua ul-Iftitah. You know, this idea of leaving this out as Mara Sunnah, it is only but a Sunnah. Don't do that. Me and you, in the time that we're living, cannot do enough. And thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam placed in the Dua al-Iftitah, قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين. When one day a lady and her husband was sitting in front of me, and I counseled them on 7 sessions over a period of 3 months, and every session she wanted out of this marriage and nobody was going to stop her. And the last session, the husband was crying very bitterly. And the last Thursday, he said to me, please grant her whatever she wants. At that moment in time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me the hidayah to say this to her. I said to her, my sister, and I explained to her exactly why the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam placed this verse in the Dua al-Iftitah. That means, say that my salah, my life and my death and my sacrifice is for Allah and Allah alone. And I said to her, my dear sister, if one day you want to put your life and your marriage together, don't do it for your husband. Don't do it for yourself. Don't do it for me. Don't do it for your children. Do it for Lillahi Rabbil Alameen. Do it for the love and for the sake of Allah. And she looked at me and she said, can I come back on Tuesday? Says, my doors are open to you 7 days a week. When she walked in on Tuesday, she said, I took your advice. I said, which one? She says, the one where you said, put your life and your marriage together for the sake of Allah. At that time, they had three children. Coincidentally, 8 months later, myself and my wife bumped into her in canal work, and I see her now pregnant. She says, "You the cause of the fourth one." I says, "Not." I says, "I'm not the cause of the fourth one. Everything happens by the will of Allah." I want you always to remember this. Always to remember this. And I said that last week at the wedding. Love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the times. Practice and love the sunnah of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Love your husband for the sake of Allah. Love your wife for the sake of Allah. And if you love your spouse for the love and for the sake of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place that mawaddata wa rahmah in your hearts. If there's a husband and wife in this audience, and the husband says, "I don't love my wife anymore," nobody can change it. If there's a doctor in the audience, do you think I could refer to the doctor? Doctor, give him 2 Panados so that he can love his wife. What do you do? And do you know, you do get people, if I read to you the numbers of WhatsApp messages and emails, our parents want me to change the minds of the children. It can only come through the barakah of the Quran and the power of dua. I want to share with you, remember when I started off at the beginning, I recited a verse out of the Quran. You'll find it towards the end of Surah Talaq, the verse 2, towards the end of the 2nd verse into the 3rd verse. And I'm happy to say that this verse, it's a special lesson I have in my marriage class, and I've given to people all over the world. But because there's a lot of ladies here, I want to share this with you. There was once when I went to perform an Umrah, and I was sitting in Medina's Haram. Now I recite this particular verse 7 times after my kunut in the morning, every morning, because I'm going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's battlefield. I need ammunition. I need Allah's guidance. I'm but an ordinary person like you. And the verse is, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَالِغُ أَمْرِهِ قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدْرًا. So here I'm sitting near the qabr of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that was now about a good few years ago, and that was a time when a lot of women were giving me a hard time from the office. Disobedient, wanting to divorce their husbands. Or they do say, he's a good man, he's a good husband, he's a good Muslim, good father, but I just want out. Shaitan, that's how shaitan works. Shaitan has a major role to play in the lives of Muslims. Like I normally say to couples, 2 people walk down the road. One walks towards the masjid, the other one walks towards a casino. Where do you think the shaitan is busy? The one who walks to the masjid because his battle is already won. Two couples, the one is already divorced, the other one is still married. Shaitan is busy with the ones who are married. It works like this. And you know, I left Cape Town just counseling a couple the day before, and I says, Ya Allah. And I said to this one lady, I am going to make dua for you the moment I'm going to enter into the Haram of Medina. And here I'm sitting near the qabr of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And I recite the morning after Fajr 7 times, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. When I finished, I walked out of Medina's Haram and I walked into a bookshop. And I see English, Arabic, Urdu. And I take off an English book. And without looking at the cover, I just took it off and I just opened it up. I just opened it up at random. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. Page 77. And I closed the book and I looked at the cover. You can be the happiest woman in the world. That's subhanallah. So ladies, you can be the happiest woman in the world. And gentlemen, you can also be the happiest man in the world. To keep the spark rolling and intact all the time in the marriage, it is important that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be part and parcel of your relationship. No Allah, no marriage, no relationship, no love, no nothing. And this is one of my anecdotes that I created in my marriage class. Think about it. Lie in bed tonight, you think about it. Love the one you marry, don't marry the one you love. Just think about it. In other words, is it possible for somebody who can meet physically now and be married in a few hours later and for them to be happy? It happened now a few months ago. Families of mine, I had to be instrumental. The gentleman is in Perth, Australia. She is here. I knew both parties. The first time physically they met was at 2 o'clock and the nikah was at 4 o'clock. How's that for you? So who says you must know a person for a long time before you get married? As long as you meet the criteria. And the criteria being those hadith of the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So, on that, there is a lot that I can say, but I want to inform all of you here today. I'm make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant me my health and my strength to do what I love best, and that is to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen. Please take my advice. There's one day to learn about the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Marriage is good but not good enough. There are many classes. My course outline in my marriage course that I offer over a period of 6 months. I normally start in January, and I would finish off now August, September, and we'll break for the month of Ramadan. I've got about 30 lessons that I go through, just covering what is about most important. What the Maulana spoke about earlier is also a very special lesson in my marriage class about the sexual adab within the confines of the bedroom. Voice of the Cape has asked me to speak at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning on birth control in Islam, which is important. There are so many important things. Is the problem within our midst and in our community is we first get married. Before that, mommy must hire the convention center. First get married. Problems arise. divorce go through, ek het jou gesê jy moet gaan leer. That should be the other way around. We should first seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave, and there is so much to learn. And then also, young ladies, I must also leave you with something that I'm also very much concerned. Whilst I have the opportunity, I must watch my time, is that when we perform a nikah, and after the nikah, we obviously make dua for the bridal couple. And then we make dua such as رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. Oh Allah, grant us wives and offspring that will be the pleasure and the comfort of our eyes. And all the beautiful things, that is why it goes from generation to generations. But sometimes, if I've been asked to speak at a wedding, and I see the way the bride looks when she walks into the hall, her body is only halal for her husband, but she's displaying her whole body to the world. It's only for all those beautiful du'as to go out by the window. That's one of the reasons why marriages also don't last. And I regard that as not important, but very important to the God-conscious Muslims. We need to do things differently to get the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As I said to the gentleman standing up there, I just said to him earlier, because I'm always very concerned about time. I says, one day I was asked to speak at a wedding, and you know, the bride must walk in with the music of Kenny G and Lionel Richie, and then goes off the qiraat. Then we make dua, and 2 minutes to 1 they introduced me to be the key speaker. And this is what I said. I says, I will be delivering the best speech of my life. It's 2 minutes to 1. We need to break for the waqt of dhuhr. It's the calling. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all that we go perform salah. When we come back, and then I'll deliver my speech. All right. That is also very important, because 2 people can be the cause of everybody sitting there during the waqt of dhuhr. And nobody goes and performs salah. And in the end, then we say, you must make dua for the bridal couple. What we recall as little things and small things, there's a saying, in fact, many years ago, there was a song called Little Things Means a Lot. But little things like that have got huge encounters and results by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah ta'ala guide us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all happy families and happy homes, inshallah. May Allah grant and protect all of you young people, dunya and akhirah. And whenever you want to get in touch with me, I think my details are around. If I can be of help and guide to you, there are many people that reaches out to me who are doing their masters and their PhDs and all that. Alhamdulillah, I will be there to help and assist you wherever I can. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.